Alright, so I want to talk about something very important that Christians don't usually use, but I think it's very important. God uses spiritual explanations, but God also uses rational explanations. And we're going to talk about the Nile River. We're going to talk about the river, these holy rivers back in the ancient world. And we're going to talk about wearing a bunch of jewelry and wearing a bunch of makeup back then and putting your jewels all over your cups and metal all over your cups. We're going to talk about why God told you not to do that, okay? A rational explanation, all right? Okay, and we're going to talk about why God said these things were evil. And of course, there's spiritual reasons why they were evil. You can say that they had an evil spirit in them, that they caused death. They cause you to distract you from God. But what's very interesting, there's a logical explanation as to why God told you not to have idols in your house, especially back then. Okay? Yes, the spiritual ramifications are very important, but the rational ones are very interesting too. Okay? There's a reason why God told people not to have a bunch of idols in their house back then. There's a logical reason why God told people not to eat pork back then. Okay? And there's a reason why God told the Israelites to leave Egypt at that time. Okay? And God uses the plagues of Egypt to explain a lot of this stuff and everything. There's lots of meaning in it. There's current explanations for these old stories, okay, that God uses. Okay, we'll start with the Nile River. Okay, so God told the Israelites they had to leave Egypt, okay, during that time. For many reasons. Spiritual reasons, yes, he was wanted to let his people free from slavery, true. Okay. Religious reasons, yes, you have to stay away from idols and stay away from false religions. That's true. Okay. That's all very true, but there's a logical explanation as to why God told the Israelites to leave Egypt. So, if you look into history, current history about the Egyptians, okay, how did the Egyptians die? Okay, most Egyptians died around the age of 40, okay? And God really uses it. That's why God uses the 40 years through the wilderness. He uses that 40 to explain a bunch of things. The average lifespan of a human being back in the ancient world was about 40 years old, which is not very good, right? Why? Believe it or not, it was for multiple reasons, but it was because of the food they were eating. It was because of their idols. Believe it or not. We'll use the Nile River. If you look into the Egyptian deaths, these people who study Egypt and they study the mummies and stuff like that, they study their remains, okay? One of the main reasons is that they all died was because of parasites that they got from the Nile River, okay? Which just led to whole kinds of problems because the Nile River is what they used to water their crops. They didn't have a lot of rain back then, so they were irrigating the Nile River. So not only was the water polluted, their food was polluted. One thing led to another, and God really uses those plagues of Egypt to explain all that. It creates a real big problem later, right? Of course, and it's so funny because people think the Egyptians were so smart, and the Babylonians and the Assyrians, they just had all the answers to the universe. Okay, if these guys had all the answers to the universe, then why were they swimming in parasites? Okay, but God knew that. That's why God told the Israelites to leave Egypt, because the Nile River was polluted with parasites. Okay, it was killing them. It did kill them. Okay, that's one of the many reasons, logically, why God told the Israelites to leave the Nile River. And he took them to the River Jordan, because the River Jordan was clean. It didn't have parasites yet. It does now, okay? The current River Jordan is filthy, okay? But back then, there was no one around there, and there was no parasites. That's why God told Naaman, who was from somewhere else, okay, to go bathe in the River Jordan 7 times, okay? Yes, God uses this for spiritual explanations. Yes, spiritually clean. Yes, God's river. Baptism, okay, yes, but there's a logical explanation which is just as interesting, okay? That guy was probably filled with parasites and he needed some clean water. But it's interesting because the River Jordan looked muddy, but it was actually clean, okay? Because the parasites probably couldn't survive in that water. Even though it looked unclean, it was clean, okay? The Nile River probably looked real clean, but it was full of parasites. Just because the water looks clean doesn't mean that it is. Okay? Alright. It gets even more interesting than that, though. Okay, we're going to keep going. So, another thing is, like in this video right here, I talked about jewelry. Okay, talked about jewelry. Alright? These people had really weird rituals. God does use a little bit of that. But this is why God tells you not to have idols in your house. Not to put jewelry all over your body all the time, okay? Especially back then, even though this happened for thousands of years, okay? Because people never read the Bible anyway, okay? They didn't listen to people back then, and just like people don't listen to it now, okay? Okay, so though, these idols, these idols and these palaces, they were covered in poison. Okay, literally covered in poison. All this jewelry was poisonous. Okay, for example, for the ancient world, like I described this in this video right here, this boundary stone video right here. I explained how the ancient people would put jewelry all over their body to protect themselves against evil spirits. Well, joke's on them, because half of that stuff they were putting on their body was mercury, lead poisoning, and asbestos. Okay? They were literally rolling around in mercury poisoning, and asbestos, and lead. Okay? And so on and so forth. They'll just keep going. Okay? They were literally covering their body in poison. They were literally putting spells on their babies, but the things that they're using to anoint their babies was literally mercury water poisoning. Okay, they were baptizing their babies in mercury water. Okay, they were putting stones all over their body and all over their children, and these stones were literally asbestos. Okay, do you get what I'm saying? All right, this is why God tells you not to have, one of the many logical reasons why God told these people not to have idols in their house, because all that stuff was covered in their idols too. Their idols were covered in poison paint. Okay, their makeup was poisonous. Okay, these guys were rolling around in poison, mostly because of their religion. Okay, because of their false religious beliefs. That's why God told you not to put actual stones all over your body, to rely on actual stones for protection, because they spiritual kill you. Yes, but they were literally killing these people. Okay, that's why God told people to leave Egypt. A rational explanation, which is still extremely useful. Okay, and the makeup. We're going to get into the makeup a little bit. Okay, I'm just rushing through this. Okay, so they had makeup. The Egyptians put a bunch of makeup on, and all this makeup was just lead. It was poisonous. Okay, that's why God tells you not to paint your face. Yes, there's spiritual reasons. You shouldn't look like a clown. Okay, but no, really. These guys were poisoning their bodies because of their religion. And I know that, so these guys were so smart and they had all the answers of the universe, but they were rolling around in mercury, covered in lead paint, and swallowing parasite water and tapeworm water. Okay? But they were really smart, right? They were just geniuses. But here's another thing. Let's just say, for argument's sake, according to them, their gods told them to do that. Okay? According to them, their gods told them to go bathe, baptize yourself in the Nile River. Put this paint all over your body. In the Book of Enoch, they have that according to the Book of Enoch and all these other texts, these weird texts, right? It was the fallen angels. It was the Nephilim that taught people how to put the stuff on your body. And so here's something that's interesting. So were these ancient people, were they just being silly and not knowingly putting poison on their body? Probably, but it's interesting that they were exactly putting poison on their body, though. First of all, you can actually prove that these demons were real. Their gods are demons. First of all, these gods, quote unquote gods, were literally telling them to cover themselves in poison. Okay, it is impossible for these people to have known that these things were poisonous, but the demons and the devil would have known that, right? They know what's poisonous. Okay, they know what exactly to put on your body to kill you and to kill your children. And that's probably what really happened. Okay? These guys probably were in communication with evil spirits that was actually telling them some truth, but that truth was just killing them. Okay? It was impossible for them to know that back then, but evil spirits would have known. Okay, they would have known that these things were poisonous, and so of course they wanted them to cover their face with lead poisoning and mercury and okay. And it's just so funny because everyone thinks these guys were so smart, and they, the Egyptians, they had all the answers of the universe. I'm like, man, you guys are so funny. You guys don't read the whole information. Or it's the aliens, right? The aliens were giving the Egyptians and all the Native Americans and the Greeks, and they were giving the Minoans all this ancient technology, all this secret information. Hey man, well, they told these people to build their palaces on Mercury lakes. They told these people to build their palaces on fault lines, rocky fault lines, and they told these people to build their kingdoms on uranium fields. Okay? Which I'll get into in a minute. Don't you think that's weird? So how helpful were these aliens? Sounds like they were laughing at you. Okay? They were laughing at them. They were telling them to build their places around death. Okay? Maybe they were right about some things, but that's what evil spirits do. They give you some information that's true, but they also taint it with poison. Okay? So when God says you're covered in poison and you're covered in death, he meant it literally too, and that went on forever. Okay, that went on to the Victorian era. The Catholic Church, you will not even believe what the Catholic Church was doing. And it was who was it? It was everyone. It was the Greeks and the Romans. It was the Babylonians and the Assyrians. It was the Egyptians. Okay, it was literally everyone. These people's gods were telling them to do a bunch of really stupid things. Like, there's lots of myths about how the Minoan Empire crumbled, but one of the reasons is probably because they were trying to build that stupid labyrinth, because it's real smart to build a bunch of tunnels under your kingdom, right? The whole thing's gonna collapse on itself, okay? That happens everywhere. Building a bunch of tunnels under your palace is real smart. Okay, thanks a lot, Zeus, or the Minotaur, or whatever. Thanks for having us build a facility that caved in on itself. Okay, you know how everyone says the devil makes you smart? The devil actually makes you the dumbest person on earth. And I'm talking about all these false religions. Every race is guilty of this. Okay, everyone's an idiot without the Holy Spirit. Okay, and this stuff all culminated together. And it made the Bronze Age collapse. That's what all this stuff is talking about. It created a domino effect for the Bronze Age collapse, okay? The water was poisonous, the crops are poisonous, there was a bunch of wars going on, okay? It started the Bronze Age collapse. And I know exactly what happened. God was quarantining the Israelites. He was because where he put them was in the middle of nowhere. He put them in the middle of nowhere for a good reason, because that was the only place that wasn't covered in asbestos and mercury palaces and nasty stuff. It was the only place that didn't have uranium. Okay, that was not a coincidence. No, he was quarantining them in the ancient world. Okay, even the Native Americans. This is so crazy. Even the Native Americans, guys. We're gonna get into the uranium. I want to talk about the uranium because it's really interesting and important. Okay? And then we're going to talk about the asbestos, because it literally tells you in the Bible about asbestos. It tells you that. Okay? But we're going to go back to the Native Americans. So the Native American Mecca was basically Chaco Canyon back then. Okay? Which tribe worshipped in Chaco Canyon? There's lots of myths. There's lots of stories. But the one that I like to use is that they all were. Many tribes met in Chaco Canyon in this weird temple thing, okay, and there's not too much known about what they were doing there. Some weird rituals, probably taking some weird baths, okay, but it just so happens that to this day, that is where the uranium mine is. Don't you think it's weird that their gods were telling them to go roll around in uranium? They couldn't have known that, but the devil and the demons would have known that. Okay, and it's so interesting because even to this day, the Native Americans will tell you that to not go there. Okay, for spiritual reasons, and because that's where the uranium mine is. Okay, you can visit there, but you shouldn't live there. Okay, Even to this day, that place is known to be cursed by the Native Americans. Okay, because sometimes people learn their lesson. Sometimes people learn their lesson, and then you go, something that was holy, it should be considered cursed. Okay, and sometimes that does happen. Okay? But let it happen to you, alright? Learn that something isn't holy, learn that it's cursed and evil. Learn before it's too late. And believe it or not, that was not the first time that ever happened, and it may be even in a story in a Bible. Okay, so some evil spirits telling people to build a temple on top of a nuclear bomb, basically, or uranium, is not original. Okay? There is proof that these ancient people were playing around with uranium technology. Okay? They were making bombs or playing around with uranium. Okay? There's evidence of that. Okay? There is this evidence of this bomb going off, possibly, or some kind of uranium explosion going off in India, in this ancient town. And there's evidence of that with the Egyptians too. They were playing around with uranium and meteorites that had uranium and all the stuff. Okay. Anyway, it's possible that something very similar happened with Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay? And it's so weird because I actually got that from reading the Bible, and then I went to looked it up. Because when I was rereading the Sodom and Gomorrah incident, I noticed something very interesting. So, if you ever seen an atomic bomb go off, okay, you know it has that weird flash of light? Okay, like this, it's a burst of light first, and then the bomb goes off, right? That is why in the Bible it says when those angels sent a flash of light and blinded everyone, that is possibly making a nuclear bomb reference. If you read the Bible, there's a blinding flash of light the angels did. Okay? It's possible that is God's evidence of saying some sort of a bomb went off. Okay? And it gets even more interesting. And now we're going to talk about how Lot's wife was turned into stone. Oh, it's just a myth. That's stupid. That's stupid. Actually, if some sort of atomic energy went off, God did it maybe, okay? It would explain why there's a process called transmutation. It's something that when nuclear energy goes off, it can actually cause things to turn into stone under the right conditions, okay? And you can kind of see that in other places too. When something like a volcano goes off, people can get turned into stone, okay? But it can actually cause transmutation, actually turn matter into stone. So that is all actually scientifically accurate. So why not? And it's possible that was not the only time something like that ever happened. Okay, there's evidence of some sort of bomb going off in the ancient world, okay? And there's definitely toxic waste situations going on. Okay, so let's just say that, for example, let's talk about that. I'm going to go a little bit deeper, okay? You know how sometimes God says he does stuff, but sometimes he just lets other people do it for him? Like he kind of just lets you shoot yourself in the foot, okay? So did God blow up Sodom and Gomorrah, or did he just let them blow up themselves? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Sometimes when God says he does something, he may actually been doing it. He may have set it off, okay? But sometimes he just lets them blow themselves up too. Like that's how his will is done. He just lets you be an idiot and end yourself, okay? All right? He lets you dig your own grave. You know what I mean? He lets you do it to yourself. But it's not his fault, it's your fault, right? All right. And I want to talk about one more thing. All right, I'm going to talk about one more thing. I want to go back to the asbestos, okay? I want to go back to the asbestos because it's really important. Okay, so these guys the asbestos thing is grossing me out, so I got to talk about it. So asbestos it can be made into a wool, right? It's false covering. It can be made into clothing. Asbestos is a rock, but it kind of has like it can be made into clothing, which is what they did do, which is horrifying, right? Okay, I'm just letting you know that kings and stuff and the pharaohs, not every single time, but a lot of the times they were covering themselves in asbestos clothing. Okay, and that happened not just with the Egyptians, it happened forever, for a long, long time. They were making asbestos clothing, okay, And it's so funny because and they used to call it wool. It was a false wool, right? Get it? You get the connection there. There's the wool of Jesus and there's false wool. And one of the main characters who used to wear asbestos wool, quote unquote, was the Pope. Okay? It wasn't just him, though. It was lots of people, but it was him. Because I'm really going to point that out, because don't you think, if you think the Pope is in connection with the Holy Spirit, then why are they also doing all this stuff? Their temples are covered in lead paint and asbestos, and the Pope used to literally wear an asbestos gown. Okay? Because you think these people are, and just like everyone else, you think they're so smart and holy. You think they're so smart and holy if they're and you say that they're in communion with God. If that's true, then why would their God be telling them to put asbestos and metal paint all over the Vatican? Okay? Because they're not. Okay, these guys were not saying these guys were not in communion with something, but they were not talking to God. Okay, now this is very important. God was using parallelism a lot to compare and contrast things. Okay, they used to have smoke in the temple. They would light candles and they would burn the sacrifices. Okay, and that would represent God's presence inside the temple. Or it could represent your prayers, and people go on and on. Okay, but you have to realize that these guys were doing similar things, but the things that they were burning were sacrifices covered in asbestos. Okay, that's why there's a whole theme in the Bible about having unclean smoke inside the temples. Okay, there's a couple of really good Bible passages that talk about unclean smoke, but God uses it literally. Yes, there's spiritual stuff to this stuff. Okay, but literally these people were burning asbestos, which is actually the worst thing you could do, because that burnt asbestos is actually still poisonous. It's just making it worse. Okay, these guys' temples, the clouds inside their temples were filled with asbestos. They were asbestos clouds, and it just reminds me of the Wizard of Oz, because she's trying to go meet this big holy guy, right? The wizard, and I'm gonna meet God in the clouds, but they're asbestos. Okay, God uses the parallelism. Okay, these guys' quote unquote holy smoke was asbestos. Okay, that's why there's evil version of smoke in the Bible. It's just crazy. These guys were they were nasty. They were not being smart at all. And I'm gonna bring up the Kaaba stone real fast. Have you ever seen a picture of a Kaaba stone? No one knows what the Kaaba stone's made of because they won't let them test it or whatever. But I'm not impressed. You really want to go to hell over this? This is a joke. Okay? Do you think this is the holiest thing on earth? It looks like garbage. I'm confused if it's even still there anymore. Did it disintegrate? Was it mercury? Did it melt? It's gone. It's like deleted. God deleted the Kaaba stone. So where'd it go? I don't see much of it anyway. Okay, so I'm going to go over it again. So people think the Egyptians and the Vatican and all these other Incas, the Mayans, blah, 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 they think they're so holy and cool. You should actually, after this video, you should look back and think, you should be horrified. You shouldn't say they're super holy and cool and smart. You should be absolutely horrified that these guys were covering themselves. They're eating paint chips, basically. And they're all inbred too, which is just lovely, right? All inbred. They were putting lead paint all over their bodies. They were covering themselves in asbestos. You should be absolutely disgusted. And it's so funny because I think God, and they're being eaten alive by parasites from their dirty water, right? All right. You should be horrified, not like, oh, they're super holy and nice, and the Vatican was doing so much more things than that, okay? They were giving people antimony. They were poisoning people. Okay, you should be horrified by this, not defend it. You're gonna try to defend the Pope. You're gonna try to defend these other people. You're just being ridiculous, man. You're embarrassing. These people were embarrassing. Not cool, embarrassing. Alright, and something else I'm gonna bring up. I believe this is making a reference to this stuff, okay, but God uses this stuff spiritually and literally. First of all, asbestos in Greek, it means to not be quenched or unquenchable, okay? That's what asbestos means. So I believe God is making a literal reference to this stuff, but also a spiritual one, okay? As they go forth, they will see the corpses of the men who have rebelled against me. The Pope, all these other religions, okay, that were not worshiping God, okay? For their worm will never die, parasites. Their fire will never be quenched, asbestos, and they will be a horror to all mankind. You think these people are super holy and smart, and they had all this ancient technology? You might think they're really cool, but they are embarrassing. Okay? You should look back on this information and say these guys are horrifying. This information is horrifying, not super holy and nice. Okay? Horrifying. You can learn from it, though. You can leave these religions behind and stop thinking they're so cool. Alright? These are horrifying, not holy. Oh, and I know what people are going to say. This was a long time ago. No. The Vatican still has asbestos all over it. People are still buying lead paint, poisonous asbestos idols. Go ahead and buy them and put them in your house. It's been thousands of years, but still, you're still doing it. People have not learned anything. God tries to tell you not to put idols in your house, but you're still going to do it. People are still doing disgusting rituals, swimming with dead people, swimming in filth because their God tells them to. This has nothing. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. This has nothing to do with race. This has to do with false religions. Every race was doing this. Okay? This is not about these races of people. This is about a religion. The Hindu religion believes you should swim in filth. Apparently, Shiva wants you to swim with dead people. Come on, you guys, wake up. This is gross. And not just gross, it's extremely toxic to the water that you're swimming and drinking in. Shiva is trying to kill you. Please wake up. But it's super holy, right? Even though you know you're killing yourself. This is killing you. You're still going in the water. The Taj Mahal. Oh, the Taj Mahal. You watch all these videos how the Taj Mahal is supernaturally built. It's super holy. It's crumbling. It's falling apart. Okay? Even if some evil spirit told you to build it, they built it so it could fall in on you. And the water around it is also poison. And, I just think it's out of this world that people have built, like, these spirits, Zeus or whoever these gods are, even in the Chinese and Japanese culture, these spirits were telling them to build their temples right on top of mercury lakes, or right on top of fault lines, or right on top of uranium toxic waste. Okay, don't you think it's weird that out of all the places on Earth, that's where these evil spirits had you build an empire? And that's not new. Don't you think it's weird that we build all of our most of our big cities right next to on top of fault lines, and right next to the water where hurricanes just constantly happen and they could be swallowed up at any minute? Or we just happen to build CERN right under the Temple Apollo Gate of Hell? Like, you know what I mean? It's like we haven't learned anything. Just build everything on top of unholy ground, or just plain dangerous. It's almost like we didn't learn anything. Okay, but there is a possible silver lining to some of these stories. Okay, for example, a lot of these empires, they were abandoned. The Mayan Empire, the Anasazi, even the Egyptians. They think that the Egyptians abandoned the area for a really long time. Okay, and that's throughout all history. There's evidence that these people abandoned their temples. Well, it's possible they abandoned them because they learned that they were actually evil. Okay? They learned. Sometimes it takes people a while to learn something that is evil, but sometimes they do. They could have left the area because they realized it was not working. It was evil. Okay? That is very possible. And there's evidence that their people turned away from their gods. Okay? Some of these Greek stories, some of these Greek people were making fun of Zeus, okay? Some of these Mayans, there was an uprising in the Mayan Empire. They tore down their own temple. Historians think they tore down their own temple because maybe they were learning that what they were doing was horrible. Maybe, okay? It's just like the Chaco Canyon thing. This thing may have been sacred and holy, but now it's considered cursed by most Native Americans, okay? Because sometimes they learn. They learn that something's not cool. They learn that's nasty and evil. And so if that's true, if that version is true, you should be like that. You should leave your nasty stuff out in the wilderness, okay? Leave your false gods out in the wilderness. Leave them behind, okay? But where are you supposed to go? Jerusalem? Spiritual Jerusalem, yes. The only thing you can do anyway is repent and accept Christ, okay? That's all you can do. There is no safe place. There is nowhere for you to go, actually on Earth anymore. Everything is poison now. The permafrost is melting. There's hurricanes, earthquakes. There's war, even if it's man stuff, like wars going on. There's not like a safe area for you to go. Even if you were to move to an island, you're going to have another problem. You're going to have to, what if you need medical care? You're going to have to go off the island to go get medical help. There's not really a safe place anymore. The only safe place is the spiritual kingdom of God. Okay? And you might die, but you spiritually have been quarantined. In a good way, of course. Alright. So please think about this stuff, guys, and thank you.